Hey guys, it's Olga from Olga's Flavor Factory. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm making homemade chicken broth today, so I thought I'd bring you along and show you just how easy it is to make it yourself from scratch. And the flavor, it's just night and day difference from store-bought chicken broth. It's so much richer, it's more concentrated, it's so delicious. You can use it in so many different ways. This is one of the things that is definitely worth making from scratch. The most important ingredient for chicken broth is, of course, chicken. I'm using a whole chicken here, but you can use chicken parts like chicken drumsticks, chicken wings. We're gonna use a whole chicken today. And then I add other ingredients to give it more flavor. So the basic ones here are bay leaves, dry bay leaves, or you can use fresh if you have them, black peppercorns, and salt. And then I'm using veggies, lots of veggies, like I said, lots of flavor. So garlic, I'm gonna use a whole head of garlic, 2 yellow onions, some carrots, celery, and lastly, I have some fresh herbs. I have some thyme right here and some parsley. Sometimes I add dill. Today we're just gonna go with those 2. Of course, you can take this whole chicken, just put it in the stock pot and cook it just like that, really easy. But I'm gonna tell you how I do it and you decide how you wanna do it. My personal preference is to remove the chicken skin. It's very greasy, there's a lot of fat pockets in it, and when it cooks down, there's lots of fat floating on top of the chicken broth. If you like that, that's totally fine. Just keep doing it the way you like it. I like to take it off, and then I also like to remove the chicken breast and the chicken tenderloins because we're gonna cook this chicken broth for like an hour to an hour and a half. By the time we're done cooking it, that chicken breast is gonna be cooked to death. It's gonna be so tough and flavorless. So I just remove it, and that way I can use it in other recipes where it's gonna shine and be nice and juicy and flavorful. And there's still plenty of meat on this chicken to give lots of flavor and make the broth really concentrated and rich. I have this big stock pot, it's 16 quarts, and I make chicken broth a lot, so I really wanted to have a big size stock pot. I also use it to make kompot, which is a delicious Russian drink that we make, so it's really nice to have a big pot like this. If you don't have a 16 quart pot, you can totally use just the biggest one that you have. It'll work, don't worry about it. But this is what I'm gonna use. So we're just going to put all of our vegetables and the chicken in here, fill it up with water, add a little salt, and get it cooking on the stove. I add the onions right with the skin. The onions, of course, give so much flavor to the chicken broth, but the skin is going to give it a beautiful golden color. So I actually go to my onion basket where I keep all my onions and add more peels because, like I said, it gives it a beautiful golden color. You know how some people use onion skins to dye their eggs? That's why they get that beautiful color. We're gonna give that color to our broth. Nature's natural dye. I use the kitchen scissors to remove the skin, which makes it super easy. The skin is mostly removed. I left a little bit on the chicken wings and the drumsticks because there's not that much fat on it. And now I'm gonna remove the chicken breast. Just cut along the breastbone. Don't go too deep because there's chicken tenderloin underneath. Go along both sides like this. Then go around the chicken tenderloin and keep going and just keep cutting right close to the bone, the rib bones, until you get to the edge of the chicken breast. Just cut it off right here. There. Do the same on this side. There's a bone that goes right here, so cut around it. The chicken tenderloin is right here, so we're gonna keep cutting, and then there's a rib bone right underneath there, so we're gonna cut until we reach the rib bone and then cut right next to it. So get all of the chicken breast off, just like this. And this is where it attaches right here next to the wing. Cut it off, just like that. And you have perfect chicken breast ready to use in other recipes. And lastly, we're going to remove the chicken tenderloin from here. Chicken tenderloins are delicious to use in chicken scampi, so good, or to make breaded chicken tenders. Put the chicken right in, and we're gonna fill it up with water. I recently made chicken wings and I cut off the wing tips and then I saved them and I put them in my freezer. This is what this is, rock hard. So I just took it out of my freezer and I'm gonna add that right into the broth. Now, one chicken is enough for you to make a whole big stock pot full of chicken broth. But if you have chicken pieces that you save from cutting up chicken from other recipes, like for example, when you cut up a chicken and you cut off the backbone, you can save that and put it into broth. I do that all the time. The chicken wing tips and the backbone, they have a lot of cartilage in there. There's still a lot of flavor in there. So it's perfect to use in chicken broth to add a little bit more richness to it. And like I said, it's a great way to utilize all of the chicken that you buy. I'm gonna add some salt. And later on, when the chicken broth is already cooking for a while, I'll taste it and add more salt if it needs it. But keep in mind that if you're gonna be using chicken broth later and you're gonna reduce it for sauces, it's gonna get even saltier, so don't add too much salt. And then lastly, we're gonna fill it up with water, and don't fill it up all the way to the top so when it's simmering, it doesn't boil over on you. Turn the stove to high heat and then keep it on high until the chicken broth comes to a boil. Then reduce it to low and just keep it at a simmer and keep cooking it for about an hour to an hour and a half. Every once in a while, open it up and skim off the foam from the top of the chicken broth and discard it. I usually just put it in a bowl and then throw it out. And just do this every once in a while so that it stays nice and clear. And cooking it on low heat will make the chicken broth clear. If you cook it on high heat, it's gonna be cloudy. The chicken broth is done. I cooled it off enough so I can work with it. It's still hot, but it's not boiling anymore. Right now I'm gonna strain the broth because I like it to be perfectly clear. And this is what I have the fine mesh sieve here for. And I like to go the extra step and add a cheesecloth. Or you can also use a paper towel. Both will work. Look at that. It is so golden and clear. Perfect. Do you see this really golden color and how clear this broth is? That's what I was talking about earlier. So this is exactly how I like it. Now, if I'm not using the chicken broth the same day, oftentimes when I make chicken broth, that's when I make chicken soup the same day. But the rest of it I will store in my refrigerator in these glass jars, and that's whatever I'll be using that same week. Everything else I'll put in my freezer. So I'll show you the containers I use for freezing a little bit later, but this is how I do it. I just put it in my fridge, and then we have fresh broth for soup, gravies, lots of other recipes. I use chicken broth so much. It's constantly in use. It makes such a big difference when you're using homemade chicken broth in your recipes because all of that flavor is going to infuse into whatever you're cooking, and it's gonna taste so much better. So these are gonna go in my refrigerator, and the rest I'm going to freeze. And these are the containers that I like to use for freezing chicken broth. Chicken broth, when it freezes, it expands, and using plastic containers is gonna prevent any chance of the glass cracking, making a big mess in your freezer, and wasting all of that delicious broth that you made. Ask me how I know. It's happened to me before. So this way it's not going to happen. I wait until the broth is cooled because you don't want to pour hot broth into plastic containers. I don't reheat in these plastic containers. The top twists right on. It's nice and tight. So even if it falls over, it's not going to spill. And also the lids that don't twist on sometimes will pop off in the freezer when the broth is expanding, and you can get freezer burn and the broth won't taste as good. It won't be as fresh. So this is perfect for chicken broth. Super flavorful and rich, golden and clear homemade chicken broth. You can use it in literally endless variety of ways, and it makes a big difference in flavor. Go to Olga's Flavor Factory to get the printable recipe, and I also have lots of ideas there of ways that you can use your chicken broth.